You know that feeling when you look back at some huge, messy event and suddenly it all seems to click into place? You think, wow, it all makes sense. It must have been planned. Well, today we're going to dig into why that very instinct, that habit of connecting dots backward, might just be one of the biggest mistakes our brains make when we try to understand our really complex world.
I mean, when you see how global technology and finance and politics all seem to move together, it's so easy to wonder, is there some kind of hidden plot? Is someone secretly pulling all the strings?
But what if the answer isn't some secret group in a smoke-filled room? What if the real problem is a fundamental flaw in our own logic, a kind of glitch in how our brains are wired to see the world?
So let's start by really breaking down this habit, connecting dots backward. It's this super common and often totally wrong tendency to see an outcome and then just assume that was the goal from the very beginning.
Think about it. When we see some powerful new technology or a global economic system that feels overwhelming, our brain just jumps to the simplest story it can find, that it had to be designed by a small group with a very specific top-down plan. We're seeing the result, and then we're basically inventing a cause that fits that clean narrative.
So why? Why is this backward logic so darn appealing? What is going on inside our heads that makes this happen? Well, that brings us right here, to the mind's pattern trap.
Cognitive psychologist Thomas Gilovich really nails it here. Our own intuition, our gut feeling, can be incredibly misleading. Our brains are these amazing pattern matching machines, right? But the problem is, they don't always get it right. They can make us absolutely convinced something is true when it just isn't.
And this quote from researcher P.L. Lamberty adds a really crucial layer: emotion. When we feel powerless or like the world is just spinning out of control, our brain's desire for patterns goes into overdrive. We get desperate to connect all those loose ends to create a pattern that gives us a sense of understanding, even if the pattern we create is complete fiction.
Now, all of this is powered by the real engine of bad thinking, confirmation bias. Gilovich calls it the mother of all biases for a very good reason. Once we have a story in our head, like, say, the idea of a secret plot, our brain literally starts working against us. It actively hunts for any little piece of evidence that supports our theory and conveniently ignores everything that doesn't.
So, at the end of the day, it comes down to this. Our brains are just wired to crave a good story. We want heroes, we want villains, and we want a clear plot. What we're not naturally built for is the really hard, often unsatisfying work of analyzing complex, impersonal systems that just don't have a simple story.
Okay, but this is where we make a huge pivot. Because to get out of that mental trap, we have to completely reset our understanding of how human society even works. We need to find what you could call civilization's true baseline.
And here it is. This is the fundamental starting point. Before there were governments, before complex tech, before big economies, there was just one basic need: managing resources to survive. Everything, and I mean everything, follows from this simple fact. This right here shows you the correct way to think about it, the right causal flow. Look at step 1. It all starts with the baseline, the simple need for survival and resources. That basic need forces us into step 2. We have to coordinate with each other and optimize how we do things, and only then, as a result of that process, do we get step 3, all the complex systems we see today: technology, economics, institutions. They are tools that pop up because of the need. They aren't the original plan.
Thinking this way completely reframes your whole perspective. Managing people and divvying up resources isn't some sinister, modern invention or secret agenda. It's a historical constant. It's literally been the basic operating system of human civilization for thousands of years. So with this new baseline locked in our minds, how does our view of the world actually change? Well, that brings us to our next section: function over intention.
So check this out. Here are the two worldviews, side by side. The narrative view is always looking for a malicious agenda, right? But the structural view sees systemic behavior. Where one person sees centralized control, the other sees emergent order. You know, patterns that just arise without a master planner. It's the huge difference between seeing a conspiracy and seeing simple adaptation.
And this leads us to a really powerful conclusion. Systemic behavior does not require a centralized conspiracy. Just because a system, for example, happens to concentrate wealth in one place doesn't automatically mean it was designed in a darkroom to do that. That behavior can just be an emergent property of the rules of the game, not a secret plot.
So the essential skill, the big takeaway here, is learning to separate a system's function from a presumed intent. Confusing what a system does with some villain's evil plan is the fundamental mistake that sends us spiraling down that conspiracy rabbit hole.
Okay, so how do we actually apply this stuff in the real world? Our final section is all about giving you a practical toolkit. We're going to call it a new lens for reality.
All right, this is your toolkit for clearer thinking. First up, always separate a system's function from some presumed intention. Just because it has a certain outcome doesn't mean that was the goal. Next, learn to distinguish adaptation from morality. A system just changing to survive isn't inherently good or bad, it's just adapting. Then, train yourself to look for emergent order instead of assuming there's a top-down agenda. And finally, and this is the big one, commit to replacing that easy, tempting narrative with tougher, more rigorous analysis. Now, this isn't about giving up stories completely. It's about developing some intellectual discipline. It's about trading the short-term comfort of a simple, satisfying narrative for the long-term power of genuine analytical clarity.
And that leaves us with one final question to chew on. Once we learn to stop connecting the dots backward, to stop instinctively searching for a simple villain to blame, what else about our world suddenly snaps into focus? What else becomes clear when we finally stop looking for the bad guy and start understanding the system?